Well, that's dramatic, isn't it? Let me read to us a couple of verses. I want to reread a few verses Gabriella read so beautifully for us earlier from the 90th Psalm. Lord, you have been our dwelling place throughout all generations. Before the mountains were born, or you brought forth the whole world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You turn people back to dust, saying, return to dust, you mortals. 1,000 years in your sight are like a day that's just gone by, or like a watch in the night. And then in the New Testament, from the book of James, just one verse. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. It is so good to see you all this morning. We've been gone for a couple of weeks, and we were following online and worshiping with you each of the 2 Sundays that we were not here. And it's just a blessing to look out and see all of your, I'm going to assume, smiling faces. You have on masks, so I can't always tell, but I'm going to assume that they're smiling faces. It was a typical moment on Seinfeld, the classic American sitcom that ruled the airways for most of the 90s. For after listening to his friend Elaine for a few moments, Seinfeld quickly interrupts with the question, is this about me? She says no. His response is just as immediate, then I've lost interest. That pretty much sums up how so many people feel in the world this morning, doesn't it? Whatever it is, to hold our attention, it has to be about us. And so not just television shows, but advertising and news programs and campaigns and even sermons try to tap into that self-absorption syndrome with titles like How to Overcome Obstacles and 6 Secrets for a Successful Life and 7 Words to Change Your Family. And all those can be helpful, I'm sure. Heavens, I've even preached such series myself over the years. But this morning, and for the next few weeks, I want us to look a little differently. I want us to put our focus somewhere other than on ourselves. Specifically, to fix our eyes upon God, for at the risk of alienating navel gazers everywhere, here is the truth. It's not about you. It's not about me. And it never was. This may be a shock to some people, I understand. But it's about God. So who exactly is this God? What should we know about him? That is to say, what are his characteristics, his attributes, to borrow a term that theologians used to use back when people read and could think? What is the nature of this God whom we allegedly, at least, have come to worship this morning? We begin with the simple observation that God is eternal. That's significant because everything else in the world is not. The 4 opening words of the Bible are simply, in the beginning, God. Scriptures tell us that the number of God's years is unsearchable, Job 36. God is the one who lives forever, Isaiah 57. He is the same and his years have no end, Psalm 102. He neither slumbers nor sleeps, Psalm 121. He is the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end, Revelation 4:8. He exists, as the scholastic theologians used to express it, in simultaneous and perfect possession of interminable life. Here's something to wrap your mind around this morning. God utterly transcends time for the simple fact that he created time. Hebrews 1:2 says, God made the ages, God made the aeon, the very cycles of time, the generations, the eons. Which means that God not only does not grow older with time, God outlasts every time. Now, you and I, we definitely grow older, don't we? And we feel it. Someone has said, you know you're growing older when your bat goes out more than you do. When you know all the answers, but nobody asks the questions. When you sing along with elevator music. When your knees buckle, but your belt can't. When you sit in a rocking chair and you can't get it going. When you enjoy hearing about other people's operations. And we can try to fight this. Will Willimon once said that after his 50th birthday, he started taking ginkgo capsules, which were supposed to help retard memory loss due to aging. But he stopped taking them when he realized he had forgotten to take them for nearly a week. We feel the effects of time. God does not. Because God is not in time. Rather, as Karl Barth once noted, time is really in him. You and I see time, you see, in rather linear perspectives, don't we? Last week, yesterday, today, tomorrow, next year. From God's perspective, time is like a circle that continues endlessly. We see it like we would see a river standing on the bank, watching it flow from one side to the other. God sees it like he's watching from a mountain above, and he sees the whole entire river at the same time, and all of its extent at every point simultaneously. Now, why does this matter, you asked? Because though we are time-bound, God is not. 1,500 years ago, the greatest theologian for 1,000 years at least, Augustine, once spoke to the mystery of time and eternity, dealing with a question that is often posed by children, but that's not childish at all. Namely, what was God doing before he made the world? And the stock answer, which even Calvin repeated 1,000 years after Augustine, was he was busy creating hell for overly curious people like you. Augustine took it a bit more seriously. He replied by saying that it made sense to ask what God was doing before he made the world, if and only if both God and the world are separate items within the same temporal continuum, but they are not. For God's years, unlike ours, do not come and go. They are succeeded by no yesterday. They give way to no tomorrow. And then Augustine added, it is not in time that you precede all times, O Lord. You precede all past times in the sublimity of an ever-present reality. You have made all times and are before all times. And the implication of this, dear friends, is that we can trust all those times to God, even the weird ones, like we've been having these last 8 months, even the hard ones, which clearly test us. Moses, the man of God who wrote Psalm 90, according to the inscription on it, proclaimed, God has been our dwelling place, our ma'on, our habitation throughout all generations, all periods, all ages, both past and future, even before the mountains were born, from everlasting to everlasting. God is God. Julie and I had the privilege a week or so ago being up in Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons. We'd never been in that part of the country before, and it was, as those of you that have been there know, it's absolutely an incredible place. We saw Old Faithful several times. We were staying in Old Faithful Village, and amazingly enough, not subject to any closures or government shutdowns. It still shut off every 90 minutes or so. We hiked up to waterfalls that were further than we thought, but worth it when you got there. We walked through geysers. It's almost like walking on another planet. But steam coming up everywhere. And then the ranger told us, well, it's because all of this, all of Yellowstone is one big volcano. It could go any moment now. I said, maybe we should go back to the car and get our things. And then in the Tetons, we stayed just across Jackson Lake from that impressive jagged mountain range. Absolutely stunning. But I learned that the Tetons are actually one of the youngest mountain ranges in North America. They've been uplifting for less than 10 million years. The Rockies are some 50 to 80 million years old. The Appalachians, they're more than 300 million years old. And then there's that mountain in South Africa. But God was there before any of them because God made them. And this awareness of the eternity and the immensity of God makes all of our little problems, even all of our big ones, seem a little insignificant, doesn't it? Not any easier. I'm not saying that. Still have to deal with them. But put into a perspective. Which reminds us that we worship a God for whom 1,000 years is but a day, a watch in the night. That's just 1/3 of the night. Think of a telescope in this respect. It uses lenses and curved mirrors and some combination of both to enable us to see distant objects. But for God, time is like looking through a telescope through both ends. And God experiences everything at once. At this very moment, God exists. At the same time, he exists at the time of Abraham. And at the same time, he exists at the time of his future kingdom. This is why Jesus could say, before Abraham was, I am. Just as we say that Jesus inhabited human flesh in the incarnation, so God the eternal Father, we may say, inhabits time, living in the one eternal now. Even more amazing, Ecclesiastes tells us God has set eternity in each of our hearts. That is to say, he's embedded in us something from creation. A sense that no matter what the times may say, there's something more, there's something grander, there's something bigger, there's something eternal. And you and I, we're a part of it. Recognizing the timelessness of God means that we can therefore live our lives with that eternal perspective in mind. Whatever may happen to us, God is bigger than it. When all is said and done, when life, like those forest fires in the West, have burned down so much of what we have carefully built up all around us, God will yet be standing with us. Here's the other attribute or truth we should know about God this morning, which is that he is unchanging. That is to say, God is not fickle like you and me. He is faithful. James, the half-brother of Jesus, wrote it this way. He said, God does not change like shifting shadows. With God, there is no variation, no paralage, no change, no mutation. James 1:17 is the only place in the New Testament that you'll find this Greek word. It means to alter, to exchange something for something else. Just as God does not grow older with time, nor can we say that God morphs or changes over time either. There's a theological school that says he does. God is ever evolving, ever changing, ever becoming something new. I don't think it's true. Our culture does that. Sometimes our culture should do that because we need to understand this gift of human life and of the world better. And as we understand it better, we begin to have a more kind disposition towards those around us. But contrary to whatever anyone today would suggest, God does not change because he can't change. He is the only absolute reference point for everything else. I've shared before one of my favorite stories of a naval ship which one foggy night saw a light in the distance, signaled for it to change its course 10 degrees to the south. The light signaled back, "You change your course 10 degrees to the north." There was an admiral on board the first ship, and so he had them return the message, "I am an admiral, change your course." The reply came back, "I am a seaman, first class. You change your course." So the admiral ordered that it be spelled out even further. He said, "We are a battleship. Change your course." The response came back, "We are a lighthouse. Your choice." My God, my friends, God is that lighthouse. He doesn't shift. He doesn't wiggle. He doesn't squirm. He doesn't move. He's true north, dead center, no matter where we are going. Thomas Obadiah Chisholm understood that. Born in a log cabin in Kentucky, he received his education from a little country schoolhouse, and at the age of 16, he began teaching in that same school. He became a Christian when he turned 27, and with no college or seminary training, he was ordained to the Methodist ministry at the age of 36. I wonder if that might be a better way for us to go. And then ill health caused him to leave ministry. He moved to New Jersey, where he opened an insurance office, but his ill health continued. It affected his income rather noticeably. Thomas didn't seem to care, though. He wrote, "God has given me many wonderful displays of his providing care, which have filled me with an astonishing gratefulness." Thomas also wrote hundreds of poems during his lifetime. One of them he sent to a friend named Runyon, William Runyon, who put it to music. Along with being an organist, Runyon was also a Methodist minister. Having been ordained at the age of 21, he pastored several congregations in Kansas. And he happened to be a friend of the president of Moody Bible College in Chicago. The song which Chisholm and Runyon had written soon became a favorite at that school too. One of the students there began to sing it on the Institute's radio station, and in turn, a student at nearby Wheaton College named Billy Graham heard it and invited the singer, George Beverly Shea, to join his new crusades and sing it all over the country. Thomas Chisholm had been inspired by the words of Lamentations 3:22. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They're new every morning. But also these words from James 1:17. And so he recorded them. Great is thy faithfulness. You know it, don't you? O God, my Father, there is no shadow of turning with thee. Say it with me. Thou changest not. Thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever wilt be. There is no shadow of turning with Christ. Chisholm lived to be 94, by the way. Died in 1960. He retired in a Methodist camp meeting town, Ocean Grove, New Jersey. But his words have continued to ring down through the ages. He reminded us that God indeed does not change like shadows that shift, that are less at noonday and greater in the evening because of the changing position of the sun. God does not change at all. There is no shadow of turning with God. For again, though he may change all things, God himself is unchangeable. So how should we respond to this eternal, unchanging God? Moses, the man of God, told us. He said we should pray that God might teach us to number our days so that we might gain a heart of wisdom. If we do that, then the favor of the Lord will be upon us. Some years ago, I happened to hear our daughter, who was at home upstairs in our house, and she was on the exercise bike, but she was watching TV, watching a televangelist, a very popular one, and she started laughing, and I went up to see what she was laughing at, and she said, "He just said, when we go to the mall, we should pray for the favor of the Lord for a good parking place." That's not the favor of the Lord. I like the way Hebrew scholar Robert Altman translates this last verse of Psalm 90. He renders it, "May the sweetness of the Master our God be upon us, and the work of our hands firmly found for us." Firmly found. Same word used for keeping dynasties, for keeping buildings unshaken. You see, amidst all of the fleeting changes of life, God can give us a solid substantiality. This morning, you may be facing a rather uncertain future in your life. Unsure as to what the next step may be, where you will live, where you will work, what life will be like with a new diagnosis, or the fresh loss, or not so fresh loss of a loved one. You may be wondering still about something that happened long ago that you've never been able to get over. But the Eternal One has already seen beyond it. He's seen down the river of our life that we can't see yet. Others may have turned on you. There is no shadow of turning with him. We see, when life is not just about you, but it's about God. Times of our lives, both good and bad, have a way of fading into eternity. Good news today is that we know exactly who made eternity as well. So as Paul wrote Timothy, so unto the King eternal, immortal, invisible, the only God, be honor and glory forever and ever. Amen.